Live streaming of SDR news coverage at HP Discover has been made possible by Intel Corporation. Check out Intel Open Port IT, where you can connect with your peers at Intel on industry topics, best practices, strategies, and more. And by Microsoft, where HP and Microsoft are working together, combining their respective strengths to deliver innovative technologies to help advance your business.
Traveling to Barcelona, we had some critical studio gear damaged by airline mishandling. That resulted in degraded audio quality during some of our interviews. We've edited the backup recordings of the interviews for maximum clarity possible. We'll offer each guest a chance for re-recording. Please watch for announcements on the Twitter stream, AXMC, and SDR News for updates.
Welcome back to HP Discover. I'm Andy McCaskey from SDR News, and we're coming to you live from Barcelona. And now we're going to be talking about criminality in the IT space. Introduce Mr. Jacob West. Jacob, welcome, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
What is your role at HP?
So I'm CTO for Enterprise Security Products, and I lead a group called HP Security Research.
Okay, so you're really involved with knowing your adversary, if you could, as your primary role.
That's absolutely a major aspect of what HP Security Research helps our customers understand, is what they're up against, who the adversaries are, what they're motivated by, what capabilities they're bringing to bear, and so on.
So how do you do that? How do you begin to study somebody who doesn't want to be studied?
Well, we have a group within HP Security Research called Field Intelligence, and these guys are highly technical. They understand the techniques that adversaries are using today, and they actually, in many cases, are infiltrating the chat rooms, message boards, forums that those adversaries frequent to understand, what they're talking about, what they're planning, maybe what's coming next.
Okay, so it requires very highly skilled individuals, not only from a technical point of view, but from a social point of view, to gain acceptance into these groups.
Absolutely. We borrow in this space a lot of terminology from the intelligence world, and I think the comparison is pretty apt. There's a huge amount of understanding who you're talking to and what you're trying to get from them.
Yeah.
Sure.
So from an enterprise standpoint, what are some common misconceptions about the level of threat and the type of threat that might be encountered?
Yeah, so over the last few years in particular, I think we've seen an increased focus on, or discussion around, particular types of adversaries, so hacktivist groups or nation-state-backed adversaries, or even particular groups like Anonymous or the Syrian Electronic Army. I think any of those is a bit of a red herring. I think rather organizations should focus on the capabilities of the adversary that they're up against, because it turns out whether you're motivated by social objectives, political objectives, or criminal objectives, the techniques and capabilities you employ to mount a breach are actually quite similar, and so that's where the focus should be.
So what would be an example of this transferability of threat vectors between different groups?
Well, so we like to think about a breach as typically composing 5 stages, and the first stage is all about research. It's about the adversary understanding the target, both the people that are in positions of power within the organization, but also the technology profile that they have. Such a profile can be developed and then sold on the black market to someone who wants to make use of it. So an adversary raises their hand and says, I have a profile of the 50 executives at HP and all the technology that HP employs. Who wants to buy that? Who wants to use that to mount a breach?
So it's really a two-edged sword, because a lot of the material that might be available on LinkedIn or in public announcements that have been made are pieces of the puzzle that can be employed in a malicious way.
That's absolutely right. So part of how enterprises need to respond is by educating their users, particularly in influential positions, not to share information frivolously, to keep those kinds of profiles as private as possible, because it can absolutely be used to target them.
So a layperson looking at this might overestimate the effectiveness of a particular group or type of attack. What are things that are very significant that we would tend to underestimate?
In terms of the kinds of attacks?
Yes.
So I think, the commonality between all of these is typically the adversaries after some data. It may be data that is proprietary to the target, intellectual property plans for the next business year. It might be data related to their customers or their users. But it's those assets, those data assets that the adversary is after. And I think a really concerning fact is that the average breach goes undetected for 243 days, meaning the adversary is inside your enterprise, targeting and collecting those assets for over half a year, and that leaves companies really exposed when they don't realize necessarily.
And not only plenty of time, but plenty of time to think about the information they're gathering and what the implications might be for other pieces of information that would be available the same way.
It's absolutely correct. They go through a phase called discovery, where they find other systems and expand from an initial foothold, and then they go through a phase called capture, where they gather those assets and eventually exfiltrate them back out of the organization.
Yeah. So are there trends in these threats? Do they go in and out of style?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we see in 2013 going into 2014 is the threats are characterized by a handful of attributes. One is that they are primarily very targeted. So rather than a commodity type exploit that might affect lots of different organizations, attackers are targeting a particular business or a particular organization group within that business, and then investing weeks, months, even years in bringing them down. So it's a very focused effort.
So is that because the information being very concentrated is more valuable for resale?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of the information that's most valuable is housed by big targets, big organizations with large pools of users, for example. And so in order to compromise an organization that size with their kind of IT security investment, it's going to be a big effort.
So in this world, can someone set out to gain access to a specific target, a specific executive?
Oh, absolutely. This is the kind of information that's bought and sold and shared.
Situation.
Absolutely, and depending on the influence that executive has, they may make a better target.
Yeah, exactly. Are there things that are really surprising once people begin to think about security that is kind of an aha type of moment when they realize the impact of all of these things coming at them?
I think what we've seen over the last few years is awareness around the security problem, generally speaking, expanding beyond people in very targeted technical roles and to people in more business-oriented roles. So we see senior leadership, even boards of directors today, recognizing that security is one of the biggest threats to their business overall. Not just in the IT space, but to the fundamentals of their business. Right. And I think that's good for those of us in the security profession, because it means we get the kind of support and visibility that we need to do our jobs.
That perhaps you didn't enjoy several years ago.
It's only getting better, let's say that.
We've been talking about a lot of malicious types of motivation here, really kind of a negative thing. How do you tie that back into HP's initiative of defining a new style of IT? How does this tie together?
Well, one of the things that really characterizes adversaries today, as I said, is collaboration. They're specializing in different capabilities, and they're sharing or selling those capabilities amongst different actors. This is something that we haven't seen yet as much on the industry side, that kind of collaboration and a unified response. So a project that I'm really excited about now is something called Threat Central, which is an automated platform for sharing threat intelligence between different organizations, helping organizations share the kinds of threats they're seeing and potentially the mitigations or responses they've developed to those.
So if you were an HP customer in the financial services area, how would you take advantage of this?
So by participating in the community, you would identify information in your ArcSight SIM, for example, security events that you've seen locally that you want to share with a community of your peers. Think of this it's similar to the financial services ISAC group that exists today, although the goal here is to bring more automation to bear. FS-ISAC is all about copy and paste, emailing around between organizations. So your ArcSight instance would share threat information. You would be able to identify threats based on information you were seeing from other members of the community. And then when one of you develops a response or the ability to defend against one of those attacks, you can share that information in an automated way as well.
Okay. Are there other industry verticals that have specialty applications similar to what you were talking about in the financial world?
Well, so the fantastic thing, well, the ISAC group that I mentioned does exist in dozens of different sectors today, although, again, in a very manual way across all of them. I think the really exciting thing is the automation and the capability that a platform like Threat Central brings can be applied in any industry segment. Mm-hmm. And so the real goal is to find a trusted circle of peers that you want to collaborate with, that you want to share with, and then let HP provide the automation and the platform to drive that.
Excellent. Where can people go to find out more information about the general topic of security and most particularly Threat Central?
Absolutely. I'd love for people to go to hp.com/go/backstage.
Go/backstage?
That's it.
There's the connection, and you too can tap into lessons learned from cyber criminals. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks a lot.
As well. Watch our continued coverage here of HP Discover in Barcelona.